Hi, it's been a while. I think I'm ready to start with my next army, Slaves to Darkness. In this video, I'm going to talk about getting prepared, inspiration, and colour. Let's get into it. Hi everybody, I'm Wayne. Welcome back. I've had a little bit of a break from army painting. I think it's time we started to tackle the next project. Well, at least I started to tackle my next project, and I want to bring you guys along with me. With my Soulblight Gravelord videos, I absolutely learned a ton of stuff. Not only about how I wanted to paint an army, but also how I wanted to document that process. Hopefully, I'm going to continue in that vein as I work on this next army. How are we going to do that? Let's get into it. But before we do me a solid, drop me a subscribe, give me a like, and all that stuff, providing that you do like this kind of content. That's done, out of the way. Let's crack on and talk about what I want to talk about today, which is inspiration, colours, and preparation. Your inspiration should come from anywhere. Regardless of what the source material is, you should be able to draw some inspiration for that for an interesting, rich and diverse army. The standard Games Workshop Slaves to Darkness theme is something that's pretty cool, to be honest. I don't hate it by any means. It does feel though like if you've seen one Slaves to Darkness army, you've pretty much seen them all. They tend to have snowy bases, or lean very heavily into the fire, volcanic aesthetic. That's not to say we're not going to take inspiration from that. I'm absolutely going to. But I want to do something a little bit different with mine, in keeping with my own preference of aesthetic, which is a little bit darker, a little bit grimmer, and I think a little bit cooler. The first thing I want to take a look at is dark, dank, sinister, foreboding forests. Why am I looking at these? Well, I like the tone. The desaturated, muted colours is something that I want to draw heavily from. There's something spooky, demonic, and sinister about it. But there's this piece of artwork as well. I absolutely love this, and this embodies something that I want to try and capture. However, what I don't like, however, is the colours. It leans back into that flame, fire, volcanic aesthetic that I've already said that I wanted to get away from. So taking this as inspiration, but then thinking about what I can do to the colours to make those more sympathetic to what I'm trying to achieve with that muted tone with a pop of colour is something that we can absolutely work with. Now, let's keep that in mind as we look at some more inspiration. You may be familiar with the character Death Dealer. Now, this hits the nail on the head for me. It embodies everything that I think about when I think of Chaos Warriors. It's got the mystery, the darkness, the forebodingness, just the sheer sense and force of evil. Now, that is what I want to try and convey in my Slaves to Darkness army. How am I going to do that? Well, let's look at some of the elements that make this character so appealing to me. Frank Frinzetta has done an amazing job with this character. I've had something of an affinity towards the look of this character, and it's been something that I've wanted to kind of bring into a project for a while now. Well, what is it then? As we can see, it's very desaturated, and as I've already touched on, that's something that I want to try and capture in this army. There's a single pop of colours. Why we're seeing that? We're seeing it in the eyes, we're seeing that red, orange glow. But when you say that's something you said you wanted to get away from, and you're right, but we can take this as inspiration. It doesn't mean we have to copy it verbatim one-to-one, and we're not going to. We're going to take this look, this aesthetic, this idea, and we're going to try and put that into our own words, or own colours, as it were, and figure out how we can make this army look something like this. We're drawing from the inspiration that we've looked at, that dankness from the forests, the desaturated colours we've already touched on, and we're going to take that single pop of colour, something to bring the army together that's going to unify it as a force, that's going to identify it as my army, my Slaves to Darkness. Let's chat about colour then. How far then am I going to stray from the Games Workshop theme? Well, in some ways quite, and in other ways not too far. I want to convey heat, fire, wrath and fury, and one thing that I've always loved is this hot pink, this energon look from Transformers, which I'm a massive fan of as well. I want to use this glowing pink, almost magenta vibrancy to come through and give that heat to counter the muted colour palettes with a slight touch of coolness in one area or another. I'm perhaps going to use that on some of the metallics. Thinking maybe on the shield or on the wraps, a little bit of blue, a bit of coolness to balance out that hot, fiery fury of the pink. With that in mind then, I'm going to use a couple of different metallics. I want to use a brass, a silver, a gunmetal, and almost like a coppery brass, something a little bit pinker that's just going to work in harmony with that really bright pink. I want to keep all of the flesh tones for the skins and things like that, but most of the army will be helmeted. So I'm going to pick out a couple of browns, earthy tones, and I'm going to have a unifying base to all of this in a warm grey. We'll keep a simple blue, nothing too vibrant, quite a dark desaturated blue that we'll filter over the top of the other colours that we're using, just to give a little bit of a hint. White obviously will be the base that's going to really give us that pop, that saturation that I want from the pink, and then the bases for the rest of it, I'm going to keep a nice muted sepia brown colour, just lending into that earthy tones, the desaturated nature, harkering back to that sinister forest that I looked at that has drawn so much inspiration from into this colour palette. Very, very earthy, barky, wooded, kind of rustic feel with this single pop of chaotic pink that's not aligned to any of the chaos gods, that's just going to give me that one bit of oomph to the entire army. We know what this colour's going to be, so let's get on with some preparation and we'll be in a good place to actually start the project then. I'm going to tackle this army in one go. I want to get everything built into the sub-assemblers that I'm going to use, get the bases sorted. I have the basing scheme in my head. I want to get those bits all done, all prepared, everything in a good, easy to access manner so I can just bang through each of the units one after the other. To do that first, there's going to be a wodge of building, so I won't bore you with that, but I'll crack on with it, and then hopefully by the end of this, through editing magic, I'll be done and you can see the results. They're all built. Future in here. Yeah, that wasn't fun. My fingers hurt. Spiky chaos death things. I ain't got demon prints yet, but I'm going to kit bash one. Future video. Make sure you subscribe. Time to get them primed. All the bases pretty much done, just a few bits on them to differentiate everything. And then I think, yeah, I can start painting. Pretty excited for this. Definitely not spending 3 years. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Magickin. Right, let's crack on. See you on the other side. And here we are, completely done. Everything that's going to be built standard is built. All of the individual units are on their bases, and there's just the flourishes to add to each of the individual ones to kind of pick them out in terms of which are the champions, etc. Now, there are a couple of units that I haven't actually built. What I'm looking at is Archaon, Be'lakor, Abraxia, and a couple of Chaos Spawn as well. There's also a Chaos Chariot that I've got that I'm going to be converting up from a Stormcast Chariot, so that's not built, but everything else is now 100% built and completed. There are a few bits and pieces of the bases where I'm going to do some elaborate scenic bases, like for Eternus as an example here, and also the Demon Prince base. But other than that, everything else is done, so I can crack straight on with the first units, and that's going to be the 40 Chaos Warriors. Having things like this isn't for everyone. I do also work in sub-assemblies, so everything is just blue tacked together to the bases, allowing me to take things off, paint everything individually to get things done in batch. This is what's going to give me the efficiency to get this army on the tabletop as fast as possible, and hopefully looking really, really good. What does the army actually look like? Well, that's another good question. Let's have a quick look at it. I've created a diagram to show you exactly what I'm going to be doing, what I'm going to be including in my army, and how I'm going to tackle the project. So, unfortunately, I said I was going to do the Chaos Warriors next, but as I've thought about it a little bit more, it makes more sense to tackle something else first. And what's that going to be? Well, it's basing. Why am I going to tackle the basing next? It's the unifying thing that's going to tie the entire force together. If we do it once, we can just refer to that video going forwards, and I just need to tackle the individual elements of the unit that I'm working on. Having a consistent basing theme throughout the entire army is really going to help with that unifying look to just bring it all together. Once we've got the basing done and locked in, then we can move on to the next element of the army, which is going to be the standard troops. I'm not entirely sure on which order I'm going to tackle this in yet. First will absolutely be the Chaos Warriors. But inside of the standard troop types, we've got a couple of other different units. We've got Chaos Spawn, Chaotic Beasts. Those are actually already painted. I painted those as part of my Warcry project a few years ago, so I'm going to utilize those rather than buying some more. There's no need to do that. And then there's also the Cavalry. We've got the Knights and a Chariot. The Chariot, as I mentioned before, I'm going to be converting from a Stormcast Chariot because I don't actually like the Chaos Chariot, so that's definitely going to be its own video. Each of these means there's going to be at least 5 videos in the troop section. Once we've got the chaff out of the way, the main bulk of the army, we'll move on to the next section. The bulk of the army, the standard troops, all painted up and out of the way, I'm going to move on to the elites. There's going to be a couple of videos in this section as well. Now, the Chaos Chosen I will paint separately. That will be in its own video. But the Ogroids and the Formoroid, I'm going to put all together into one video because they're functionally the same in terms of looks. There'll just be 1 or 2 differences here and there. Also, I can't pronounce half of those, so I'm not even going to bother. And then we've got another cavalry unit, the Varangard. Now, these are very busy. I'm really looking forward to getting these painted and just seeing how they look on the tabletop, and they will certainly be getting their own video. That's going to be the majority of the elites. I can't think of anything else, but we may come back and add something else to this section later on. But this is giving you an idea of a roadmap of where I'm going with this series. There's a couple of loose ends that I want to tie up before we get to the really, really fun stuff. And that is the specific faction elements. Inside of this, we've got 2 distinct videos. We're going to have the endless spells, the ones that are specific to the Slaves to Darkness, and the piece of faction terrain, the Nexus Chaotica. Both of these will get their own video as well. And last but not least, we've got the command units. Now, there's a couple of subcategories inside of here, each of which will get their own video. So there'll be 8 videos in the command section. Now, we're going to tackle the generic elements first. So we've got a couple of Chaos Lords, the Chaos Lord on Carcadrak. I think that would be really useful to have that as an independent video, just looking at how we specifically paint the Carcadrak, in fact. We've got a number of Chaos Sorcerer Lords in there, and I'm going to have a couple of Demon Princes as well. I want those to all be their independent videos, and I think one of the Demon Prince videos is going to be a conversion, something a little bit more interesting than the standard Demon Prince. The last section in the army build will be the named characters. And we're going to do these in reverse order to what I've listed them here, because I don't really want to redo the diagram. So it's sorry about that. First up, we're going to have Attack Abraxia. Really, really cool model. Again, we're going to have this on a custom base. Really excited for this. Eternus. Yes, we are having Eternus and Be'lakor in the same army, just to offer that versatility, something that I want to have in there. But Eternus, again, will be on a scenic base. I'm thinking right now that it's going to be very similar in terms of look to the Varangard, so we'll probably concentrate specifically on the elements that are different, that we want to just make a little bit more poppy. The base will certainly play a big part in this. And then finally, we're on to the big 2. Be'lakor, absolutely love this model. It is one of my favorite models of all time, and I cannot wait to get this painted. I think this is going to look really good. Just absolutely slaps in the middle of the army. Huge wingspan, and he looks so cool. I want to retain that darkness to him, but we'll talk about that in a specific video. And then last but not least, the absolute daddy of them all, the centerpiece model, Archaon himself. I've had this for a while now. I can't wait to see it built. I've never messed around with this model. I think it's probably going to be one of the biggest models I've painted to date. And now that I've got the theme locked in my head with Goddess colours, I'm starting to picture how this is going to look on the tabletop. And if you can't tell, I am really excited. And that's what we've got. That is the structure that we're going to work to. The way forward for this series of videos. It's not going to be sequential by any means. I'm going to sprinkle the video series with a number of other videos as we go along. I'm probably going to jump back and do some of the Soul Blight stuff as it's released, because there are a good number of videos to this army build, but I'm really excited to see what it's going to look like, see what it's going to be out on the tabletop, and hopefully you can follow along with me and just see how we've gone from grey plastic to hopefully what is going to be a really good looking army inside of a few months. So we've got a rough list of colours that we want to use. We've picked those out. We know what paints we're going to use to create this theme. And I'm thinking I want to use some different techniques as well. I relied quite a lot on oil paints for the Soul Blight Gravelords. I'm going to use those in certain places for this army, but I'm going to use different techniques as well. I'll be relying quite heavily, I think, for the battle line units. Very fast, getting to tabletop standards, perhaps slightly above techniques. So we're going to use some dry brushing, some stippling. In the next video, we'll take a look at the first units that I'm going to do, which are going to be the Chaos Warriors and any other chaffy units that we've got in bulk, even though I'm not going to have loads of Chaos spawn. I'll put a diagram up, but that's for next one.